Many years ago, this man called me and said, could you see my wife? He said, I don't know what's wrong with her, but she's obviously having a breakdown, and I just don't know how to deal with it. In came, she seemed very normal, sat down. I started talking to her, and she said, well, the thing is, my next door neighbor keeps breaking into my house and cutting off one stem of my lily just so I know he's been in there. So I'm like, okay. And then she said he took one bit of my Christmas wreath. So I knew he'd been in the house. Because I've also got a house in Scotland, and he goes up there sometimes just to take a stem off my lily. And I'm thinking, who would really do, it's a 7-hour trip. And lily stems fall off naturally. But you can't say to her, oh, no, that's crazy. So I listened. And then she said, anyway, I got these Alsatian guard dogs, and he cut an inch off their fur. And I said, well, have you got an alarm? She goes, yeah, but the problem is, you see, he got into my London house and got the codes to my Scotland house. And by the time I changed the codes, and he'd already been there, and then he got back into see whatever I said to her, she had an answer. And he knows the beams, he can crawl under them. I'm thinking, this is really odd. So I said, okay. And then she said something that was my ear probe. She said, because I said to her, so what did you do? She goes, I called my dad. I said, did you call the police? She said, no, I called my dad. And that was the ear prick up moment. I'm going to ask you a question. Why would someone who thinks they've got an intruder in the house, imagine if you're her and there's an intruder in the house, or they've been in the house and gone and you're married, who would you call? The police? Who would be the second person you'd call? Your husband. The dad is like 75 years old, so I'm thinking, why would she call her dad? So I'm going to ask you, why would she call her dad and not the police or indeed her husband? Attention. Attention, absolutely correct. Attention. Oh, this is for attention. So I said, okay, I'm going to give you 3 options here. And you're going to tell me which one it is, because you know. I said the first one is all of this is absolutely happening exactly as you say. The second one is you think it's happening, but it's not really happening. And the third one is you're doing this to get your husband to choose. Number 3, because I presented it very nicely. This is happening exactly as you say it is. It's all true. You believe it's happening and it's true in your mind, but it's not true, or there's a benefit to this, and the benefit is you're getting your husband to choose. It's that one. Yeah, like she didn't know. She's like, oh yes, that's amazing. I'm doing it. I never knew that. Of course she knew, but never make the time. But yeah. I said, because why would you call your dad? Surely you would call your husband. Because my husband doesn't care about me. I said, but he does. He called me, made you and paid for it because he's very worried about you. And I said, what you're doing is getting his attention in the wrong. She said, he's so busy. He's always traveling. You know, we have this house in Scotland. He's never there. I said, well, you have to tell him. Why don't you talk to him? And so what she needed was hypnosis to feel incredibly confident, to sit down and say, I love you, you love me, but you're never here. And I'm telling myself a story, and my story is you don't love me. You're always busy, and I've created in my head all these things to make you notice me, which then allows him to come back and tell her his story. So she was completely revolutionized by that. But it seemed very complicated in the beginning. It actually wasn't complicated at all, because I had an ears prick up moment. Oh, this is for attention. So you will occasionally have clients who come in and tell you very odd things, not that often. But always remember, just deal with what emerges, and often say to them, is there a benefit to this? And of course, that's what role, function, purpose, and intention is. We're finding the job or indeed the benefit. And I could have done that, but I hadn't actually even invented role, function, purpose at the time. Because all the things that you're learning on the course, dialogue with the hurter, missing part of you, are all things that I learned from clients who go, oh my God, when you did that, that was a game changer. When you did that, that changed my life. And so RTT is very led by the things that work with real clients in real time. And eventually I came up with role function, because we're asking one client, if this issue had a role, what would it be? And then I learned to ask them the same question for if it had a role, if it had a function, if it had a purpose, if it had an intention. If there was some weird benefit to this, even though I know you don't like it, what would it be? Check out my next video here.